Hello, everyone. We're just waiting for everybody to get online and get in, and we'll get started as soon as we can here. First of all, I want to say happy 4th day. May the 4th be with you. And remember that Yoda is here to help us all along on this important workshop. My name is Dan Hendy. I am the education manager here at PRPS, and it's my pleasure to be hosting this workshop. And as soon as we get everybody in, we'll get started, as I said. Okay, welcome to PRPS's Professional Development Webinar Series. Today's workshop is the ABCs of Grant Writing with Kathy Frankel and Gary Pinkerton. Today, again, is May 4th, and we're happy to have you here. Before we get started, we have to go through some necessary rules for being online. As you know, this is a Zoom meeting, and you will have the chance to wait, I have more there. This is a Zoom meeting. Participant will have the ability to unmute yourselves to speak. However, because this is a large meeting, when not speaking, please mute yourself, as this will minimize any kind of background noise, dogs barking, things like that. If you do have a question during the course of this, please use the chat box to ask that question, or if you have some concerns, to alert me of the concerns. I will be monitoring the chat box throughout the entire event, and I'll be able to stop our speakers and ask those questions for you. They will also open up for a Q&A period at the end of their presentation. This session is approved for 1 hour of continuing education credit, or 0.1 CEU. At the end of the program, a link to the SurveyMonkey questionnaire and a QR code will appear on the screen. After completing the survey questions correctly, you will be awarded that credit, and I'll send it out later on that week. For those of you who need to watch the recording again, or have people that you know that that won't be able to attend today, the recording, as soon as I process it and post it onto a YouTube channel, will be available for reviewing, and I will send out the links to that recording as soon as I can. Okay, so that's all the housekeeping. So I'd like to go back to my introduction. I'm happy to have with us Kathy Frankel and Gary Pinkerton with us, and a short introduction on both of our presenters today. Kathy received her Bachelor of Science degree in Community Leisure Services from Slippery Rock in a long time ago. She served as the Director of Parks and Recreation for Cranberry Township, Butler County from 84 to 91, where she gained experience in grant writing. Kathy also served as the Western PA Regional Manager for the DCNR Bureau of Recreation and Conservation from 96 until 2021, where she has reviewed and rated thousands of grant applications before her eventual retirement. She currently works, of course, she can never be fully retired, and she currently works as a subcontractor for Gateway Engineers, as well as a consultant for Sissy Sue Consulting. Gary has also received his Bachelor of Science degree from Slippery Rock in 73. Gary served as the Director of Armstrong County Parks and Recreation from 74 to 84, and Director of Parks and Rec of Butler County from 94 to 2018. As a director in Armstrong and Butler County, Gary was successfully submitted and administered many grant applications for acquisition, planning, rehab, and new constructions to many of Pennsylvania state departments. So you have a lot of experience here, and I'm real happy to turn it all over to them.
Okay.
All righty.
Share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work. Did it work?
Nope.
No, I still got you.
Now did it work?
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool. Thank you.
All righty. Just to follow up a little bit on what I have, because again, when we talk about submitting grant applications to a lot of departments, I have, of course, DCNR is one people never think about the Corps of Engineers, which I have, Department of Environmental Protection, CFA, you name it, DEP, a lot of those things, because of where I came from is in Butler County. At the end, we did most of the grant writing for all the municipalities in the county, actually administered the grants, recreational grants that they got from whatever source. And we actually interfinanced the project. So I've spent a lot of time doing this. The gap in between Armstrong and Butler, I was a sales associate for a playground equipment company. And as you can see now, after 3 weeks of being retired, got bored. And so on my own time, my own whatever, it's really a nice retirement job. I still do that. And I still do grant writing, for my local municipalities. I still do grant writing for some of the small communities that when I talk to them about wanting to upgrade their parks and they have no idea where to go. So enjoy what I do and enjoyed my whole career. So Kathy?
Sure. And so I'll just elaborate a little bit, and thank you, Dan, for the introduction. As he said, I did retire from DCNR in November of 2021. And after 3 months, not 3 weeks, after 3 months, I had decided that I better do something to keep myself off the streets and out of trouble. So I work very limited part-time with Gateway Engineers, writing grants for their clients. They're not just specifically for parks and recreation. I've learned a lot about sewage lines and water lines and all kinds of fun stuff that go along with all the work with municipalities. And then I do have my own business, the Sissy Sue Consulting, which I am available to do grant writing and assist with anything in regards to your parks and recreation stuff. So, feel free to reach out to me at any time.
So that's kind of who we are.
Yes. So to begin, the best thing with doing a grant and writing a grant is, first of all, have a vision of what you want to do. It's best to have a project in place and seek out a grant that is appropriate to seek funding for that project. Do not do it the other way around. You do not want to say, oh, here's this grant, what project will fit it? Because most times you do not have enough information, and the project's not well enough along at that stage of the game. Having a planned project and then seeking the funding is the key to it. And as I have on the slide here, is it's very important to have that project identified in some sort of a plan, because most grant applications that are out there are seeking to justify why you want to do this. And if you already have it in say it's in a comprehensive plan or a master site development plan, regional plans, that is so much better to support the justification of why you're wanting to pursue this project at this point in time. You want to ask yourself with the project, what is the defined cost of scope of work, because that's going to assist you in identifying how much it's going to cost, because you're going to need to provide justification and a detailed budget in regards to the project, so they can determine what's eligible, what's ineligible, should they not be able to fund the project as a whole, where could potentially some cuts happen. But that also, helps you to really address your narratives and such, having a clear defined scope of work with it. It to just be a personal thing, that this is something that it's a whim of mine. Like, I think back in my days, like they were looking at flooring for a gymnasium that was appropriate for one of the council person's children to roller skate on. That's not a good reason to just be pursuing it, because in reality, most times by the time the project's complete, that kid's not going to want to roller skate anymore anyways. So, look at the benefit of the most majority. what is the main goal and objective of having this? And that goes back to the benefits. How do you plan on implementing it? Making sure that you have enough time, from, beginning, applying for the grant, getting awarded, getting contracts, doing design, and then doing the construction, and then any follow-up that goes with it. Later on in the presentation here, we're going to be talking about the time needed to do these projects. And so that's really important for you to take into consideration the time that it's going to take to implement it. Who's the best applicant? A lot of times the grant applications require that you have control of the property. If the property's leased, those things all need to be identified. And then also it's very helpful to have knowledge of other projects similar to yours that have been funded through different grants, and maybe seeking after those, and also even the grant that you're going after, having a good idea and understanding of what projects have been previously funded, so that helps you gauge whether your projects really fit it for that program or not. This is you, Gary.
Yeah, just real quick though, going back to the vision thing, is one of the things that we always did very honestly in our planning process. And again, even on the county level, like I said, we wrote for most of the municipalities in Butler County through our department, is I always had a project on the shelf. I always had a project I always had a budget for, so that when something would open up, I could reach out to maybe who did my comprehensive park and recreation plan or master plan, be able to pull that off the shelf and just say, hey, can you update my dollar numbers for me? So that, again, and then, we always looked, almost like 3 years ahead. It comes down to the point of, at the last minute, where do you sit at, where do you need, and as Kathy said, very honestly, you don't let the money drive your project. It's kind of a neat statement, because in turn, there may be dollars out there to do this, but it's not what you want. Now, also saying that is when maybe you're doing a park project, whatever, I always list in priorities, say 1 to 5, a certain grant application. Yeah, I can get 1. That's what I really want, but 1 isn't going to get me the points. So I may have to drop down to item 3 and 4 on my list, because those are the items that I'm going to put in the grant application that's going to get me points from the review agency. So I still end up though with my major project, because again, I still left the #1 priority for that project in place. It's just something that we did over time, and it always seemed to work for us real well. And again, part of it comes down to, the scope of work, just like we said about what projects, what are you going to include in the scope of work? You need to have a good idea what you want to do. Site development drawings are need to be done. And again, if I'm a small community, whatever, sometimes it takes me a while even to raise the money to be able to pay our consultant or our local engineer to come up with the site drawings that we need for almost any applications. Letters of support. The other thing that we talked about a lot of times, letter of support. A lot of agencies, a lot of small communities. You know what? Hey, I'm going to go get a letter of support from my state representative. I'm going to go get a letter of support from my senator. We may have multiple senators or representatives who cover my county, or maybe my municipality is, but that's great. That's fantastic. But everybody does that. I don't know of a senator or representative in most cases that will not give you a letter of support for the application. So what you're looking for is, say you're building a playground at a local park. What you're looking for is getting letters of support from people who physically use that facility, who will use that facility, whether it be a daycare who comes once a week, or a Boy Scout troop or anybody like that that is going to use that facility. And again, the other thing, and I'm sure Kathy saw a lot of it, is just the standard block letter where you send it out and give it to everybody and everybody puts their title on it and sends it back. Okay, you need them to take the time. You can give them ideas, but you need them to take the time to be able to do the letters in their own language. You know what I mean? So that, again, DCNR, CFA, or whoever you may be applying for understands that it's just not something that you want or your municipality wants. So that's the other thing that comes into play. Talk about some things as far as letters of support or letters required from like your local planning office or those type of things. You know, examples that we have, again, when I worked in Butler County, you know, my planning office only reviewed the letters at their regular monthly meeting. So in turn, you had to be sure that you planned far enough ahead that you got what you needed for the application. And I'll be honest, that happened at the very beginning of my career. But like I said, at the end, I got to know the planning office director, and on the quiet side, Kathy, close your ears. Again, I had his letterhead with his signature on the bottom of it. I wrote the letters of support and sent it to him and put it on his file. But in turn, that's not how it normally works. You know, it's that buildup of what you're looking for. The other thing you need to talk about is maybe a meeting with your own internal staff, or maybe a meeting with your planning director or your park and recreation advisory board or whatever, because in turn, they may be seeing things as you prepare to do an application or preparing your planning to do the application that you don't see. You know, let's go maintenance. Let's talk about maintenance. You have a good maintenance guy on staff, you know what, and you're doing something dumb that's going to make his life harder to maintain a facility by just making a slight change in what you're proposing. You know, that's great input. You know, I mean, it comes down to the point, maintenance is expensive. Maintenance is something that you did. I mean, I worked under the philosophy and whatever, if my people in the summer are off my mowers and running weed eaters, I'm losing money. You know, so I mean, it's important to involve those people. How about if you're developing a, say you have an aquatic director and you're putting in to do a pool renovation project, okay? Well, it would be foolish, you know, I mean, not to include them in, you know, just because there may be things that even though you had the consultant do something and do the drawing and proposing what goes in and does the budget, we had a case one time, it was just the difference of the location of a lifeguard chair, you know, because we ended up, and they saw it, I didn't, that we actually end up with a blind spot that we would have had, or a part that would be very, very difficult to guard from that chair. It was just a matter of moving a chair, you know, a few feet, but it came into something that was actually helped us in the long run. And you want to make those things important to you. You want to make those things that you still want to have the strong app, but you want to have a very good app, and something that when you get funded is something that is usable. So
the one other thing that I would add to that, in you know, the potential of having a internal staff meeting is basically just creating the awareness that you are applying for this grant application, so that they all are put on notice that this is what's happening. Here's the timeline. Should you get awarded, you know, there's going to be some expectations at that point. So this way they can incorporate, you know, if they need to provide cost estimates, site drawings, you know, all those types of things for the grant application in itself, let alone further down the road, when they're looking at their schedules, you know, when they're scheduling meetings, whether they're scheduling time off for vacation, etc., to make sure that, you know, okay, this grant's going to get awarded in, you know, September. Maybe I don't plan taking a vacation in September or October, because, you know, that's maybe when I'm going to be up to bat to assist with implementing the project. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way. Going the wrong way again. There. So then additionally, with the grant, to focus on the format. Each agency or organization that's requesting an application has different guidelines and what is required in it. Some do require a very specific font size. You know, I list here on the screen a very specific, which I see a lot, is, you know, the font needs to be, you know, 12-inch Arial. You know, so you want to pay attention to that, that you're not using something fancy dancy that they're not looking for. And they're also looking to see how much you pay attention to their guidelines. If you don't follow their guidelines, that becomes problematic. They may have some key buzzwords that are appropriate for it. And you know, what are the appropriate focuses of that application that the organization is requesting? You know, are they looking for it to serve, you know, is it focused on underserved or poverty areas? Are they looking for climate change, all inclusives? You know, those are kinds of things that they're looking for. Looking and being very direct and to the point. I always used to say, you know, when I worked for DCNR and had to review grants, I had so many in a year that the more brief it was and to the point, it was so much more easy for me to read, and I would want to read it. I didn't want to hear about that the park was created in 1941. You know, it was just direct and to the point is very helpful. Do not use abbreviations, because abbreviations, acronyms are very different. You know, a lot of agencies may use the same abbreviations for a similar thing. You know, for example, you would not want to use PRPS. You would want to spell it out at least the first time. You could probably put in parentheses PRPS, but you would want to spell out completely Pennsylvania Recreation and Park Society, or the same with DCNR. You know, it's the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, because not everybody understands what those acronyms or abbreviations stand for. I've always said, you know, make sure you dumb it down, because you're not really sure on who's really reading it. And in talking the first person, you know, it's more like, instead of it's the municipality of, it's we are seeking this funding, we are doing this. It's not, you know, I live in West Mifflin, so I'm going to say West Mifflin Borough is seeking funding for this. It's we are. It makes it a lot more personable. Gary, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and still staying on that same project, one of the other things that you may want to do, very honestly, is actually have somebody even read your application after you're done. You know what I mean? Because understand, a lot of times when people like Kathy is reviewing your application, or especially central office of DCNR, and really at least they have staff in the field. But if you're looking at CFA, you're looking at LSA, you're looking at DEP, the only thing that they see and know about the application or the park that you're putting in is the description that you put there. You know, I've always said a picture's worth 1,000 words, you know. So in turn, you want to be able to attach those pictures. You want to have people review it, proofread it, make the changes. Again, I was infamous for it. And as I said before, I wrote anywhere from 6 to probably 12 grants a year, even to just like DCNR and to LS, you know, I mean, those type of things. So the bottom end, I'll be truthful, I did a lot of cut and pasting. Okay, you know what I was horrendous at is a lot of times I missed changing the municipality that I was applying for. And I was totally horrendous with that. And you know, they say cut and replace, all that kind of stuff. hey, you heard when I graduated, so you know what skills I'm lacking. So a lot of that is my first question when I started at Butler County, and they go, what kind of computer you want, and what programs do you want, all this. I said, load the games. My administrative assistant takes shorthand. I'm good. So
Hey, I'm gonna jump in here real quick. Kathy, I think what I'm hearing from all this, and if I could summarize, is you want to answer the questions they provide and be as concise as possible. And that will
Correct.
keep you on the straight and narrow as far as applying for that grant. And I know Gary has mentioned there's several ways that you can sort of cut some red tape around there. And you know that PRPS does not endorse any of those kinds of actions officially. And that's it. That's all I'll say for now.
yeah, and they don't.
Right, the cut and pasting. Right.
Yeah, but in turn,
But yeah, I think what Gary's point with the cutting pasting though is to make sure that, going back to having somebody else read it, because I know myself, I've done that, is that, you know, you're
No,
doing
it's not the
it's not,
it's not the cut and paste. It was forging signatures.
yeah.
well, the whole 9 yards is we never forged the signatures. They were electronic, and I had his letterhead. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So no, it was very, and like I said, very honestly, it wasn't a case that the planning office did not know. I had his permission to do that, and actually would send him a copy of what I did. Because otherwise, all I was doing was writing his letter, sending it into them. They ran it through the monthly meeting, he signed it and sent it back to me.
Oh, all right, I understand better now. And cut and paste is a very useful tool. I wouldn't. I'm a cut and paster myself. So,
but yeah,
Yeah.
and going back to what Kathy said, very honestly, and even what Jan just said about answering the questions in detail, you always want to answer any question. You know, even if you can get 1 point, you know what I mean, even on a 10-point helps. The other thing that Kathy mentioned earlier is read the questions. You know, read what terminology is in these questions and throw the terminology that they have in the questions back at them when you answer the questions. You know, I mean, at least I always felt that you gained additional points when you're responding and using the terminology that they wanted answered directly. So I don't
And
think,
the
Go
other
ahead.
tip here, the last one is is to complete everything early, because, you know, I've run into this situation, and I'm sure many of you have as well, is that, you know, somebody ends up going out sick, you know, or there's a glitch in the system, which I was panicking yesterday because I had to call in the IT people. I couldn't open my email. So yeah, I was thinking if that didn't work today, I was not going to be able to access the link to get on this webinar. So Gary, you would have been flying solo.
yeah, that wouldn't have been good.
And without a partner. No. So, you know, you always make sure you start early, and you know, and what I mean by early is not a month in advance. You know, you should really be, you know, as soon as you can possibly get started. You know, I know a lot of folks like say 3 months, but if you look at, like, I go back to my experience with DCNR always holds their trainings in the fall, and then it opens in January, and then they're due in April. So that's quite a time span for you to really get ahead of things. You know, get out there, decide what your project's going to be, and all the details that go with it. And that helps you reach out for support letters. As Gary had said, you know, there's time that's required with that. Some require some lead time. You know, and you're not chasing them all at the last minute. Resolutions need to be passed at municipal meetings. And you want to make sure that it gets in enough time to be on their agenda and to get authorized well in advance. But I know another experience that happened when I was at DCNR is that so many folk, the one person uploaded so many documents to the grant application, it crashed the whole system. You know, so you got to take into considerations there. So many things can happen, and you know, you always need to be prepared for that in planning your time.
Yeah, I mean, I had an example even what Kathy was saying about waiting till the last minute. very honestly, I had a situation where my computer developed a virus at the office. And understand, our offices were based in the parks. Our IT department was in the county government center. So in turn, it was a case of, again, I was procrastinating, which I've been known to do. And
We all have.
so it was a matter of panicking, saying, hey, I need you to come and fix this. And now, because well, whole 9 yards, well, you know what, they gave up, they just gave me a new computer that day. But the other thing that happened, and this was years ago and it hasn't happened for a while, I remember when DCNR first started uploading applications. And I think it was what, the first or second year, Kathy, very honestly, like you said, the system went down. So everybody's sitting there in a panic mood trying to upload this. So don't wait till the last day or the last 2 hours to try to upload something, because you don't know when it's
15
going to happen.
minutes.
You know?
Yeah.
It's do as I'm suggesting and not as what I did.
Right. So then you need to be aware and conscious of that some of the grant applications have other requirements, like application fees. You know, CFA requires $100 application fee. It's non-refundable. You know, so you need to pay attention. Majority of the ones I've come across do not require any type of fees. So I always say, you know, it does require some resources and especially time to complete the application, but typically it's no harm, no foul if you go for it. Also paying attention to what is eligible match. You know, there's a variety of them that are out there. You know, what do they mean by volunteer time? What do they mean by non-cash? What's acceptable? In-kind services. A lot of those terminologies get confusing. Like in-kind services, and from my world, was that it was your municipal workers or internal staff. You know, it wasn't out external that, you know, I said, if it was, that would be like a donated service. But like federal monies can't match federal monies. There are a few things within state agencies that they can't match each other. Like, you know, one DCNR grant type of grant can't match another DCNR. Or I do know that RCAP, or it's called something different now, but RCAP was not eligible as match to DCNR. So paying attention, the organization or agency is requiring in there. Also, there's percentages that are allowed in regards to these. I have the 3 listed here: the administrative fees. You know, typically they're 2%. I know DCNR does not allow for any administrative cost. Contingency fees. You know, sometimes they're 10-15% maximum. Engineering fees, same thing. They're typically 5 or 10. And then a lot of times the application does not allow for those fees to be utilized as match. They have to be completely within a grant request. And then also just keeping in mind, thinking about engineering fees, I just ran across where there was a lot of the recovery money out there.
Watching this grant to see how to write grants. Go ahead, I can talk.
No, well,
So, but you're not on mute, Kimberly. Yeah, okay. So, the engineering, I forgot where I lost track once she was off mute there. But with engineering, you need to pay attention of, I know what it was. So the Federal American Recovery Act grants, engineering, the federal government requires that it goes out for bid. And that became problematic for some of the communities because they had municipal engineers that were doing the work. And so you need to pay attention to that because if you are asking for any of those funds for engineering costs, you're going to have to put it out for bid but basically, typically engineering costs are considered professional services, which do not require you to go out to bid. But if you are utilizing federal funds, it is a requirement.
The other thing that comes to play in this, when we're talking about the grants, and use the other, if you haven't did one in a few years, okay, the other thing is, once you do apply and do whatever, you need to look at the back end over administration, because a lot of times the administration of the program has actually changed, you know. And very honestly, I'm going through that on a local playground project that I wrote a grant for at the local municipalities. And the process has changed as far as administration at the end of it. So you have to have an idea, even as you do this, is where you're going to end up at when you look at the backside of this and how this all comes to play. Contingency funds, contingency fees, you know, one of the things that we always used to do, and again, at one time we did most of our own cost estimates, then it got more that DCNR wanted something more sophisticated. And when we worked with our consultant who was doing our local design for the application, we always asked him to add a few more dollars in the budget under certain purchasing items, because everybody knows it's very seldom that you're going to, even though you may be awarded the grant that same year, and as you move on into the next year, everything inflates. I mean, COVID just blew budgets right out of the window. You know, I mean, even when I do on a part-time basis now, you know, as the industry as a whole, you're looking at a 25% increase, you know, from what, you know, before COVID. So you need to add the extra dollars of what you're going to come up with at the end. So you do. It's just difficult sometimes to actually have a budget. It's difficult to come time at the end to be able to do what you really want to do and get what you need at the end. So,
Gary, you want to talk about mixing and matching up birth duties?
yeah. I mean, for years, we always worked under the philosophy as we don't spend our money until we can match it with somebody else's. And, you know, a lot of times in our own county, our county being Butler County at that time, we did our own in-county grant program to the local municipalities. And we did that totally on purpose, simply to be able to use that as match money to a small community, because we had small communities of 500 and some people. I mean, I wrote a grant one time, a rec grant for a small community in Butler County. The rec grant they got was the first grant that they ever got in the history of the borough. And that's only possible. We were set up to be able to provide match to those other agencies. And then we also got match from, you know, the local clubs, whether it be Lions, whether it be Rotary, whether it, those type of things, park and rec boards who actually worked and actually went out and raised money, and to be used as match money to the applications. And again, most of them want some kind of certification, a letter or whatever that, you know, they're having that. And sometimes, again, you got to bank on it that by the time maybe a year, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, you know, that organization, you know, the leadership may have changed, even though they have a commitment. You know, I have had them when they backed out, where you have to come up and pick, you know, who's going to replace that. Other things that we've matched on a lot of bases, and on, as you can see on the slide, the CFA grant is matchable to DCNR again, and CFA is actually very honest. It's a nice program. Again, the last grant round, I think I looked it up last night just for curiosity. I think statewide under Greenways, Trails and Recreation, they funded 93 projects across the state. But you know what? It's only a 15% match, you know. So in turn, you can end up, the matches you can get is 250,000. But in turn, if you come up with 37.5, you know, you can add that on. I mean, there's a trail project right now that I know of that they've got, you know, they're for 37.5, they've got a project of $287,000. You know what I mean? And that's all they have in it. But in turn, you can take CFA and it can match DCNR. In this case, the example that's here is, say that CFA was awarded the 200,000. Then you wait and you put in a DCNR application, you know what I mean? And then you have your local match with very, very local dollars. Example I have right now, again, the township I live in has about 2,100 people, and they have closed down mining towns. We have 2 small playgrounds in each one of the 2 closed down mining towns, and we're connected with a rec commission that has a borough of about 800 people. We have one of the mining towns now. It's funded by DCNR, funding by in-kind service and the local park board, and we're redoing that. We did a CFA application to redo one of the other small mining town ones, but the whole story of this, again, we still have a basketball court that needs to be replaced in new mine. So the discussion is right now, because CFA is a 5-year contract, the next DCNR round, again, if we see signs that things will be good, that we may take that part of that CFA money and look for DCNR money to try to replace the basketball court and upgrade, both of the local playgrounds in a very, very small community. The other ones we have used over the years is totally in-kind service, because in-kind service, and again, Kathy looks at it one way. I guess I don't know what I may be off anymore now is volunteerism, where we actually a lot of times did community built or work days or whatever at the local park, and again their hourly rate, which is really not bad, what the state will accept. We've used that as match. Again, it comes down to the case of what are you looking for? Dollars are always out there. Well, there's one where honestly I was at municipality in again back in Butler County with the new rec director, and the old rec director was there and I was there, just trying to help them out a little bit. And the case is, we got talking, they had a flood in the area and part of the main road got blown out, and so the question is, they thought they had insurance on it. They didn't check the right box. They only were getting partially reimbursed for the damage that was done. And both the ex-rec director and myself, we sort of looked at each other and said, you know what? Why didn't, and again, like I said, CFA's due the end of the month. I said, you know what? I'd run CFA. Why not? I don't know how successful you'd be at it, but you have the local match. Again, that was money that I would have never thought about, or he would have never thought about being available to him. But it is dollars. It's your dollars. You know what I mean? It's your money. So the municipality doesn't have really anything out of their own budget to make the repair. Because if they don't get some additional funding, this thing's going to sit there for a while. So I don't know whether he's going to run it or not. That was just a suggestion that I did. So, but.
Sorry, I was muted.
I just got back, so sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but anyhow, what I was just going to add real quick is that I have on here the catch-22, because when you are using other sources for funding, you have to really kind of strategize on how you want to do it. The example on the slide is using DCNR. Oh my, something keeps going off and on here. Is
Kathy,
that
Kathy, let me stop
CFA
you
and
for a minute.
DCNR? Yeah.
Let me stop you for a minute. I think your internet connection's going a little in and out. It's been kind of fuzzy the whole time. So I have the slide up here on my program. And
Okay,
you just need to tell me when to switch it over.
go ahead.
The next slide now?
No, you're good. You're good on this mix and match still. So
Okay.
I was talking about the I pay you You shared it, all right, okay. So the catch-22 is it's really, you got to pay attention because a lot of times, with the example here, what I was saying is that, it's best to go to CFA first, make sure you get that funding and then use it as match for the
Right.
DCNR because a lot of the DCNR wants the match to be secured at the time of the application. So, that's why I say it's a catch-22. So having a great plan and great strategy on how you're going to mix and match these together.
Yeah.
And you can go ahead and change the slide.
Well, and while he's doing that, the other one that we use a lot in where I came from is community development block grant funds. Again, believe it or not, the county got, of course, their normal allocations, and they had a hard time coming up with projects to be able to use their money for in Butler County at the time. And normally when you think about CDBG funds, it's got to go into a low income area. You got to prove and do the surveys and all that type of thing. But one of the things that is in there is without any surveys or any additional work, it's the removal of architectural barriers. Well, removal of architectural barriers can be putting in the hard surface walkway or parking pad to be able to get to a facility that you're developing, which is matchable to CDBG. The other place that we used, we actually renovated a pool in one township, and they were actually an entitlement community, and they allocated their CDBG funds towards the allocation of the pool. Again, CDBG was eligible to put in the zero entry. Okay, well, again, we put in the zero entry that matched the pool. And also the following year, and again, it's something that is harder to do in today's world. They used the next year CDBG. We went back to DCNR to be able to renovate their bathhouse. And again, the township at that point in time came out of that project without any township dollars involved in the whole project because they were able to match it with their community development block grant funds. And again, you got to understand this is probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or whatever. So the pool renovation for both the things were right around the $1 million thing. But again, it comes down to the case that you really got to search, really keep your eyes open to what is out there.
So, and then just kind of getting towards the end here, because I think we have like 10 minutes left. So I want to leave a few minutes for some questions, but just in follow up, in submitting your grant application or preparing your grant application, once you hit submit, you're not done. You need to always be prepared for anything that they may come back. I've just experienced that with a few of the grants that we just did with DCED, and they came back and they asked for revised budgets in regards to clarifying what the engineering costs were or administrative fees and such like that. And as Gary had alluded to before, including pictures or photos of your project is important because it helps clarify for those folks that are not here and have never ever visited the site. They may not be able to clarify very specifically out of what you wrote in the narrative as to what the project is. Make sure you have a checklist of all the things that are required. And so, what are the next steps in regards to design or, requirements of staff, so that you just remain on task, that you don't get diverted. Like I'm very good at that. You see something shiny and all of a sudden you're off on some other tangent, and that you haven't missed any documents or any type of follow-up. But there are some things that you could start doing while you're waiting to hear if you're awarded the funded, because if you're really serious about moving forward with the project, you're gonna, maybe want to go to the next step and develop a request for proposals if it's a planning project. Go ahead and start doing your design and developing your bid specifications and drawings, and actually establishing committees to, it doesn't matter whether it's a development project or a planning project, but a planning project specifically, you're going to need to have a study committee and a steering committee. So start identifying who those folks are. And as you know, we were just talking about mixing and matching, seek other funding that can match what your application is going for. You know, you may put in at the time that if the match is required at the time of application, you know, typically folks say, okay, the municipality is going to commit to that, but it doesn't preclude you from going out and seeking other funding that could, you know, replace that at any point. You know, say, you know, you go into DCNR and your municipality says they're going to provide the match, but, you know, you get a CFA in the meantime. So, you know, you can back that out and put that in there. So, you know, you're never done. It's always, you know, keep it at the forefront of your mind that you have that application there. And if there's other things that transpire in the meantime, before you hear if you're awarded or not, it may be very advantageous to you to reach out to that agency and provide those new updates. You know, say, you know, if you did receive additional funding for the project, or, you know, there's been a design change, or you've gotten other support letters. It's very, very helpful to keep your communication dialogue open between you and the agency or organization that you had applied to.
Yeah, because you come up to the point even
Want
like
to move
when-
to the next?
yeah, we talked about, you know, even on the next slide, when we talk about looking for grants from like Walmart, Sam's Club, whatever, most of the time the manager
Yeah,
controls
move
them.
to the next slide. Yeah.
And they control those type of grants that are out. So again, we were successful just by talking to the manager and saying, hey, no, we'll cover it. We can get you, I can get you 500, I can get you 1,000, whatever. But it's not even the money that you need for match. The thing that you're showing now is, and again, we're still talking DCNR more than the other ones, but in turn, now you got a partnership. You got a partnership with Walmart. You got a partnership with Sam's Club. You know, that actually helps to get those additional points in the partnership category. If I'm writing for a local municipality, you know, the part of the thing is fine. You know what? Partnership with the County Park and Recreation Department. You know what I mean? Because in turn, my bosses, who would be the county commissioners, gave us permission to prepare the application. You know, if they had a grant, like I said before, we had a local grant program. All right. The partnership was with the county of Butler because the county commissioner provided a small grant to help provide the match for the grant. So, you know, you really got to keep it open, look hard, give it a lot of thought. Again, it goes down to the point of why you need to be working it ahead and what role you're going to go, you know.
Yeah, and these are just a few examples of links that are out there. They're pretty generic, and they provide other potential resources. I know PRPS, you just recently put out in your PRPS scoop that you're going to be providing a link to many funding opportunities. So it's great to tune into that. And I know that you're partnering with DCNR. I know Aaron Wiley Moyers, who is up in the Northwest regional office, started doing the funding opportunities e-blast, and now she shares that with all the DCNR regional advisors. So, if you're looking to get on that mailing list, she would, they'll get emailed out to you. So reach out to your regional advisor. It's a wealth of knowledge. Providing many links to grant opportunities, their timelines. Also, that email includes training opportunities that there are for very specific topics. And also it does provide news articles that are relevant to a lot of things that are happening in the parks and recreation world. But I don't really at this point don't have any other things other than, I'll be available if anybody wants to have any questions about applying and or other funding opportunities that are out there. But I think with time's sake here, we need to move into the question and answer thing. And Dan, you can move to the next slide. And so does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to provide? And I think you could put our contact information up there now, Dan. Move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
So
the
to
other-
ask questions, you can unmute yourself or you can put them in the chat box and I'll make sure that they get relayed.
Well, when we're doing that, the other thing that comes in play is, you know, talk to each other. You know what I mean? There was a lot of times during my whole career, and I still do it, is, you know what? I have given my whole applications, for whether it be DCNR or CFA or DEP, to other rec directors across the state. And I have no problem doing that. And I'm sure there's other people who are professionals in PRPS who would not have that problem. Even though I ended up competing with them, you know what? It just made me, now that I have to do a little bit better if I want to keep my percentage of grants coming in. And again, PRPS at least has always been a very friendly world and very cooperative, and the people who are members have no problems, at least most of them, in answering those type of questions.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions. I'd like to close and say thank you to everyone for participating, and I hope this was informative. And again, here's our contact information. If you have any questions or would like to get more information, feel free to reach out. Hit us up with an email, phone call, whatever. We'll do our best to help you out.
All right, I'm gonna put up my last slide here. Hold on. Let me go on and just hold on a minute, everyone, and I'll get you all set up. 2, 3, and share my screen. Come on, baby. Share my screen. There we go. And share. All right. I put Erin's correct email address in the chat box if you wanted to reach out to her. She is the one who has that that listserv of all the different funding opportunities and training opportunities available in the state. Right now, I want to say special thanks to Kathy Frankel and Gary Pinkerton. Their emails I put in the first part of the chat box if you want to go back and look that up. Again, the session has been approved for 1 hour continuing education credit. You can either follow the SurveyMonkey site to get to the invitation, or you can take a picture of the QR code on the screen there and get to the survey. Right now, I'm going to I will be putting that survey link into the chat box and get that out to everyone. So until then, thank you, Gary and Kathy.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just got to copy this link. Come on, there we go. And put it into the chat box. There we go.
Okie dokie.
We will have time for a few questions. Anybody has questions, they want to go ahead and unmute yourself,
Yeah.
ask your question.
Hey, Dan, I gotta excuse myself for at least a minute. My mother's in a nursing home. I'm getting a call from there.
Okay. Boy, I know how that is.
Yes, I did live that too for
Yes.
3.5 years.
Mhm.
Kim,
All right, I don't see a lot of questions, and Yoda over here is saying, you know, may the fourth
may the
be with us.
4th be with you.
He did have a riddle for you if anybody wants to stay on for it. What kind
Sure.
of a car does a Jedi drive? A Toyota. Yeah,
Boo hiss.
all right, well, that's all I got.
Thank you
today.
for that, Dan. Thank you, everyone.
All right, everyone, have a good day. And again, if you want to contact Kathy, Gary, or myself, please don't be afraid to get in touch, and we'll be happy to help you out. Good luck on your grant writing.
Absolutely.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.